Thank you very much, John, for such a generous introduction. I tell people after I had been honored with that award, and they tried to come up with calling me sir and stuff like this, I say to them, you know, I'm much too humble to be called sir and things like this. So my advice is, Your Highness will do. I came, I guess, in the nick of time. I was stuck in traffic, and I was a bit worried that I may not get here in time, and fortunately, John saw me walking in just as I was supposed to give this presentation. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all again. You seem to be in even larger numbers than last year. Either that you're anticipating even better things, or you're wondering what is likely to take place on a year of the snake. Now, how many of you remember the song, What a Difference a Day Makes? You know, it goes, what a difference a day makes. 24 little hours brought the sun and the flowers where there used to be rain. Well, you know, I know my fans out there would want me to continue singing, but I'm not going to do that because I wouldn't want to break my contract with Universal and Sony Records by means of impromptu singing. On the other hand, considering what I said last year, there may be some of you here who think that I should shift from being an economic commentator to a singer. If I recall, in connection with last year's theme, moving twice as fast, I said that the economy would not move that fast. I said then that if we take the lowest actual growth rate, at the time I was speaking, the final figures were not yet in, of 3.2% in 2011, and multiply this by 2, this would give us 6.4% minimum growth rate for 2012 in order to reflect an economy that has moved twice as fast. Considering that the 2012 full year growth was 6.6%, well, should I eat crow or turn singer instead? Or both? But I started with a song to highlight an important point, which is what a difference a year makes. If the growth rate in many of our previous years were even close to what it was last year, we may not be here asking ourselves, how can the economy grow twice as fast? But we have had a history of lost opportunities, and as everybody knows, our penchant not to move twice as fast, but to take one step forward and 2 steps back. Fortunately, I don't really have to eat crow, since you will recall that I also said I would be happy to be proven wrong. I'm sure I'm not the only one happy. How many of you in this room are enjoying the benefits of that impressive growth performance in your businesses or in stock market transactions? I'm sure if I asked for a show of hands, there will be quite a number of you. There is indeed much to be happy about, and I don't need to dwell on them at length. They have been repeated with glee in various publications, both here and abroad. But just let me tick off a few highlights. The 6.6% growth not only exceeded the government's target of 5 to 6%, but was fairly broad-based. The industry sector grew by 6.5%, which was more than twice its growth rate in 2011 at 2.3%. Well, the decline in mining from 7 to negative 3.7% was compensated by construction that zoomed from negative 7.3 to 14.4%. Manufacturing likewise grew from 4.7 to 5.4%, and utilities from 0.6 to 5.1%. The service sector was also a major driver, growing at 7.4 from 5.1%, with contributions from trade, transport, communications, and real estate. Even the agricultural sector was said to have performed relatively well at 2.7%, considering the several weather disturbances that hit many parts of the country, especially the rural areas. Government expenditure grew at 12%, which was in fact the key element in the economy's performance, as it started from a very low base of 1% in 2011. On the demand side, government spending growth accelerated to 12.6%. Well, you've read this many, many times, that the Philippine stock market expanded 33% last year as the composite index broke record highs 38 times. It is viewed as one of the most dynamic stock exchanges in Asia. Last February 19, the main Philippine Stock Exchange Index broke the 6,600 level for the first time, and some even expected to hit 7,000 this year. The country's gross international reserves reached a historic level of $84.2 US dollars worth of imports, which can finance a full year's worth of imports of goods and payments of services and income. Registered portfolio investment inflows into the country last year reached 8.4 billion US dollars, which is the highest in 10 years. Overseas Filipino worker remittances also rose to a record level of 21.4 billion, which is 27% of GDP. This in spite of political unrest in the Middle East and economic downturn in Europe, where a large number of OFWs are. The Philippines is now number 1 in voice services and number 2 in non-voice services within the BPO industry, already employing some 700,000 Filipinos. The BPO sector is expected to add even more new jobs. After 8 credit rating actions, the country is now poised to attain an investment-grade credit standing from the various credit rating agencies, from its rating of 1 notch below investment grade. Transparency International reported an improvement in the country's anti-corruption drive as it improved its ranking on the list of the most corrupt countries, ranking 105th out of 176 countries. Well, that's still low in ranking, but it's a significant improvement. The Global Competitiveness Report of the World Economic Forum ranked the Philippines 65th among 144 countries in its 2012 survey, a significant jump from 75th the year before. Well, clearly, the favorable perception in both the domestic and international arenas towards the administration's anti-corruption campaign has had some effect. However, even the government realistically admits that much more has to be done. It would be important for the Arangkada Forum to maintain a posture of positive criticism rather than joining in an unquestioning chorus of praises that have the pitfall of being self-congratulatory. After all, true friends should not be shy about telling the truth, particularly if it may be helpful towards the realization of a common cause. In this light, the question I wish to address is precisely whether we can rest on the laurels of recent successes or look upon these successes as a platform for the vital reforms needed to realize the country's potential, as the theme of this forum indicates. So I come as a true friend. I even wore a protective shade of yellow for my necktie to ensure that my intentions are not misunderstood. But not a few have voiced the opinion that the recent successes are mainly reflective of the financial economy and not as much of the real economy. Earlier, I asked you how many of you have benefited from the stock exchange booming the way, and I was pretty sure that I'd see a pretty good raising of hands. Now, I ask, how many of you in this room are market vendors or tricycle drivers? I'm sure there would not be that many. Of course, if I ask for a show of hands of how many of those in that economic strata are as happy as those that have benefited from the recent financial booms, I might not see that much of a show of hands. Not only because they would be largely unrepresented here, but these may be those who may not even know what the stock market is, but try to make ends meet to be able to buy and sell at the wet market and survive day to day. Perhaps, to put some perspective, let me mention the major concerns. While the country posted the highest growth rate of 6.6% in Southeast Asia last year, we also account for the highest unemployment rate in the region at 7.2%. And that is not counting underemployment in both the urban and rural areas of the country. This raises the question of what we have to do in order to ensure that the growth we are experiencing moves forthrightly towards inclusive growth. Poverty reduction has not kept up with GDP growth rates, as it has not yet resulted in any increase in mass employment. Second, we continue to lag behind our neighbors in foreign direct investments. We registered a growth rate of 10.6% in FDIs, which is a far third behind Thailand and even Cambodia at 62% and 165% respectively. And while Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore did, in fact, register negative growth rates, The Philippines, with its positive growth rate, is just at par with the likes of Cambodia in absolute amount of FDAs at about $1 billion US. The updated statistics for the period January to November 2012 shows that foreign direct investment in the Philippines reached $1.2 billion. This, I believe, is the first time we breached the $1 billion level in a long time. But $1 billion may not be something to breastbeat about when compared, for example, with Indonesia's $18 billion US. Third, while government infrastructure spending surged last year, the overall state of Philippine infrastructure still lags behind neighboring countries whose citizens used to come to the Philippines to learn from us. Even some of the elements of success have their downside. For instance, the stock market boom may also be an indicator of hot money growing at such a rate that may make it too hot to handle. Not only has its benefit not reached much of the real economy, but it is always prudent to remember the adage that a bubble is not seen as a bubble until it bursts. So, what reforms are needed? These reforms would be those that would target the three most important priorities to be able to have sustainable and inclusive growth take place, namely, job creation, and job creation. The financial economy by itself, despite the stellar performance of the stock market and the prospect of an investment-grade credit rating, cannot pull that off by itself. The Arangkada Philippines has been at the forefront of advocating specific reforms in vital sectors of the economy. Let us visit some of these key Arangkada ones. Agriculture. The key to improving this sector remains our ability to transform it towards higher productivity and a more agro-industry-based configuration. That will not happen unless we revisit our land reform paradigm that focuses on ownership much more than productivity, to the point of nearly romanticizing subsistence farming and placing much of the blame and burden on credit policies. The present Land Reform Act expires in 2014. Perhaps inputs towards generating important amendments should begin to be gathered rather than just allow the present law to lapse or just automatically be extended another 5 years. Infrastructure. The government's, particularly the DPWH, great leap forward in spending here last year did account for a large part of the impressive growth. At the same time, infrastructure relating to other than roads has not experienced the same boost, and there are even some concerns in the energy sector, particularly in Mindanao. Manufacturing. We should all be delighted to learn of the marked increase, particularly in Japanese and Korean investments. And we continue, however, to suffer from a poor rating as among the more difficult countries to do business in, with the exception of PEZA. More than most other sectors, manufacturing is a generator of jobs. Bureaucratic processing, a skewed labor policy, including a so-called profit-sharing bill being presently deliberated in Congress, and poor level of infrastructure still hinder our ability to be a preferred investment destination in this sector. Mining, well, I should not belabor the point on mining since many of you know about it, but the division of jurisdiction and responsibility between national and local governments still leaves many prospective investors confused, to say the least. Tourism. We all applaud the gains made by the Department of Tourism, which has increased tourism from 3.5 million in 2010 to 4.3 in 2012. But this pales in comparison with the 25 million tourists in Malaysia and even 7 million in Vietnam. I'm confident that more can be done to have more fun in the Philippines, but the Department of Tourism can't do it alone. Again, infrastructure looms as the bottleneck. Well, I am encouraged that at least we seem to have a government that listens, at least much more than some in the past. And I'm realistic enough to realize, having been in the cabinet myself, that you cannot do all things all at once unless you end up rushing into too many false starts and too little real accomplishment. May I therefore suggest a few priorities as quickly as I can, because they're telling me I don't have much more time. In fact, I'm already over time. Number one, NAIA. To me, this is a no-brainer. With the DOT's tourism doing well, the sad state of NAIA continues to be a major drag. Clearly, the present single runway international airport is primitive compared to almost any other international airport in ASEAN. Number two, PPP. I said last year that the continuing central problems are infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure. PPP has begun to move ever so slowly, but the Anghari and school buildings may not be the kind of energetic push one is looking for. I did see that more PPPs are expected to get moving this year, but again, bear in mind that there is at least a 2-year gestation period for PPPs to get going. Number three, smuggling. The value of smuggled petroleum, fertilizers, rice, and other commodities is estimated at almost $20 billion annually. This is a big hole in the drive for a better fiscal situation. BIR can't go it alone in spite of its dedicated tax collection mindset. That smuggling hole has to be capped. Number four, competition policy. I understand the government now is formulating a competition policy, and at the same time there is coursing through Congress something called an antitrust law. These become important to watch because the very essence of a democratic, capitalistic economic environment is competition. And we have to make sure that the executive branch's competition policy and that in Congress are at least in sync. And number five, a more serious consideration of amendments to the Constitution to encourage foreign investment, particularly its economic provisions. I hear there is some reluctance, but the question in most of us is, if not now, when? Isn't this the best time to attempt it when we have a president that does not carry any suspicion in the minds of others, of many, of trying to extend his term in office? There is one part of the president's inaugural address that I remember, that he would want to introduce change that could not be easily reversed. And I, like many of you here, would hope that he does not run out of time to do that. But bear in mind that 1/2 of this year is likely distracted by politics, and 2016, when the president's term ends, lasts only 1/2 year, most of which is devoted to presidential election politics. That leaves about 2 full years for this administration to institutionalize the needed reforms. Institutionalizing reforms is not the responsibility of the government alone. We need to do our part. This year, the most important aspect of our responsibility lies with the forthcoming elections. Many have observed that this is the most confusing elections with respect to political alignments, as well as the most dynastic elections we've had. It may be too late to change the political configurations as we know them today, but it is still our vote and all the processes involved in helping ensure its protection that needs to be brought to bear by us. Finally, she's about to kill me. The world will not be standing still while we race to improve our lot. We need to be alert to global game changers that could negatively or positively affect our economy. On the potential negative side, the possibility has been talked about that a currency war may loom, an offshoot of which may be the strengthening of the peso to a point disadvantageous to our present 2 pillars of the economy, remittances, and the BPO industry. Fortunately, at this point, the BSP still has the weapons at its disposal to keep the peso from being too strong, whatever that may mean. But the fiscal side of the equation must be in sync with the monetary side, and I understand the fiscal side is beginning to borrow more in pesos rather than in dollars, and that is a good first step. On the positive side, 2015 will be the year of moving to deepened ASEAN economic cooperation. This could prove beneficial to us in many ways, but we have to put on our thinking caps now and identify our position in this looming new environment rather than be caught flat-footed when its reality is already upon us. In conclusion, I am told by feng shui experts, see how serious this speech is? That the year of the snake can slither hither and thither and bring treacherous pitfalls. But bear in mind that the snake is also the symbol of the medical profession. And the right economic medicine, in the right doses, could give us a halfway mark in this administration that could produce a winning margin for a better long-term economic prospect. Thank you very much. Good day to all. Have a wonderful forum.